Hi, this is Seamless, and today we're going to do the making of bass Antics. It was the track that I posted earlier. If you haven't heard it yet, there's a whole separate video for that, and you can also download it on the SoundCloud. If you like hearing it and stuff like that, subscribe to me, and you'll hear more things. Also, you can follow me on SoundCloud, Facebook, and Twitter under the name SeamlessR. That's same throughout all of that. Twitter's new. That's a new thing. All right, so let's get right into it. This is the second drop with no sound. That's awesome. All right, let's do it again. All right, so in there are almost every sound that I used in this track. Almost. All right, now you've heard every sound. The little pew pew thing right there. So let's start off with the obviously cool thing that people want to hear about, the Vocodex vocoder style growl stuff and whatnot. So I'm going to go over to a more obvious example of it, and we'll take a look. All right, let's turn off everything except for the carrier in this side here. We're just listening to it. Right? All right, so open the Vocodex. You can see I'm modulating the bandwidth and the pitch, the modulator pitch shifted. Unlike in the Vocodex video, which, by the way, has more in-depth explanation of how this works, I didn't pitch shift the audio samples, which the two that I used are this one.
Oh, yeah.
And this one.
All right.
They're just normal, and then I left the pitch shifting to Vocodex, because I could do that. I didn't do a whole lot of complicated bandwidth stuff, like I didn't go into the bandwidth line editor and actually edit where you can do things like that. It's just pretty straightforward main page stuff. So you can see here in this automation clip, this is the bandwidth, this is the modulated pitch shift, and these operate the carrier stuff. So let's listen to the carrier. I'm going to disable Vocodex. Right. And we'll just listen to the carrier by itself. Now, this is just Citrus FM, like I do. And I have a billion videos on this already, but I'm going to talk about some cool things about this. So normally, when I make an FM bass like this one, which is one of my normal basses, I have the second operator operating FM operator 1, and I have the fundamental, and then I have also a harmonic. In every other FM-based program, you have to have a whole separate operator be that harmonic, unless you have a waveform that just is this waveform in the operator. That's why Citrus, I think, is a lot more powerful than most other FM-based synthesizers because of that fact. However, I decided to see what it would sound like if I did just that. If I did have just a fundamental oscillator in operator 2, and then also the harmonic in operator 3. I went on a little step further, and I put in reverse phase everything into operator 6. Before I talk about that, operator, the cool thing that you can do when you have the harmonic as a separate operator is that you can modulate that again independently of operator 2, because in most of the basses I do 2 or 3 deep chain of operator modulation, and you can do that with this. Only now you can have other independent modulation of operator and the harmonic, and that could create some interesting tones. So this was not really all that interesting because it's just a carrier, so I didn't really try that hard. But as I was saying, I put it through operator 6 in the opposite phase, and I did this because I wanted to create the sort of pitch warble effect when there's a pitch difference between two similar sound sources. And then I linked the pitch to modulator or modifier Y, and then this enables you to control how fast it is. I took advantage of that, not at all in this entire track, because again, it's a carrier, didn't really care that much. But I think it's just cool to show that off a little bit there. So speaking of FM, let's look at back at the beginning of the second drop. the main bass that happens here. So the main bass in this is derived entirely from this moment. That's, again, with no sound. I'm awful at this. That happened way over here. Did that kind of an accident, and then I was kind of like, you know, that could be like a whole part on itself. I mean, I made it that way. So what's special about this is the X and Y that happened together. You can see here it says VBT bass. It's because I took it directly out of the Vocodex bass testing track and modified it a tiny bit. It's this one, yeah. So in here we have the usual with the harmonic in with the fundamental operator, frequency modulating operator 1, and then 3 is modding 2, 4 is modding 3, but then 5 is modding 2, and 6 is modding 5. So there's a separate chain of modulation, with beginning with 5 into 2. 5 has its own what? Oh yeah, volume. Okay, Jesus. 5 have its own volume modifier going on here, so that when the X is moving around, you can bring in Y and create different character changes. So I'm going to demonstrate what that sounds like just by doing it manually for a second. So the sound morphing that happens when you move around, like with it and against it and whatnot, is just very cool. So like if we just watch the modulation for a second while the song plays. There's also reverb going on when the bass hits, and like I did this kind of dumb, like I did a whole separate automation just for reverb, but I could have just linked the reverb volume to be modified by the X automation clip, because it's basically I basically only wanted it to happen when X happens, but that just didn't occur to me, and by the time it did, I was already too far into doing it like that, so it would have just been weird. So that's the basic FM type like that. Another bass that happens over here. Oh boy, another bass that happens over here is this business. That is straight up a Hammer preset called Filthy. This was designed by Toby Emerson, and I've always liked this preset. Like when Hammer first came out, I found this preset. I was like, "What? It's just so good." And I don't really modify a lot of it. Like Y controls pluck time, which is basically just like attack and like staccatoing the sound. I do, however, modify an A and B position. It's just great already. Like I barely did anything to the sound. I EQ'd it like a bit. Speaking of effects, I'm going to talk about the effects on this bass over here. Again, the chorus, some EQ, the reverb, obviously, a limiter. So you're going to see in this video a lot of really dumb uses for the limiter. I use it just for making things louder when there are so many other ways to do that like this is just a waste of a limiter. However, if you do use limiters on things like individual things, like just like a kick but not a snare and stuff like that, make sure that your attack is as low as it can be or just off completely, because if there's attack, it's gonna delay the sound. And so you can see up in the upper over here, you can see the millisecond count. Like it's normally on over here, and that's almost a 2 millisecond. Maybe it is just 2 milliseconds. It's just 2 millisecond delay that is just there automatically, and that could throw some stuff off if you're not careful. So just a thing. It's mostly important for stuff like drums, but like I said, like I could have upped the volume of the bass like internally. It's even turned down a little. Like see, like it's just not a very smart thing to do on my end, but I did. You know, whatever. I tend not to care about stuff like that just because I very, very rarely run into CPU issues. Like as you can see, I'm running like 12 millisecond delay, just on the buffer. I am running triple buffer though, and I'm not, but I am. Like, so 24 seconds. You saw the delay up here, 54 milliseconds. So like like 2 years ago, my computer would not have been able to handle it. The computer that I had 2 years ago would have been like, "What's wrong with you? Stop it." So there's that. Let's see, the other bass is this guy. That bass I took straight out of is it this one? Yeah, I took this one straight out of Dreams of Bass, which there's a video playthrough for in my channel, which I think also has an FLP download for it. This one has a little bit more complicated things going on. Like, this is what it sounds like without effects. Did anything happen? It's hard to tell because there's also stuff going on. So it's... The differences are primarily these choruses. Now, you see in a lot of choruses that I use for these basses, I have very low delay and low depth. This is because I'm trying to mimic a specific effect, and that's unison effects in audio, or synthesis rather. I think I'm also using unison in here. Nope, not at all. It's different than using just primary unison inside a channel, inside of Citrus. I'm really trying to recreate what I found that I could do with harmor resampling, but without using a harmor. Like, the benefit of this track is that I don't have to use resampling to get a lot of the sounds that I want. So one other thing I want to call attention to is the importance of playing around with pitches and the notes that you use for your basses. So like for this part, for example, this pattern here, I just use note sliders to usually octaves or binary thirds. Same thing with this bit right here. How high that was kind of arbitrary, but it was going back down to E, because this whole thing is in E. It's not even really like a key in the traditional sense. It's just like everything is E. Just in case anyone didn't know what this is already. Pew pew here. Let's see, did I do anything special for this? I don't think that I did. It's probably just pitch, right? Yeah. I threw in some FM just because, honestly, you could do this with just a sine wave or just a square wave or something. You don't really need to be that intense about it. But it's just an envelope on the pitch that it is also some funky like chord differences. And I also have a sub going out so that there's bass, because it's important. I also use it over here like this, which I really didn't expect it to do that, to be honest. But that's FM for you. Stuff is weird. Let's just take another look at this, just so in case you want to be exact about it. So yeah, I'm not doing anything. There's no X mods, just pitch and settings, and then also this is 45%. This is freaking 7%. These are embarrassing. This is a preset in Toxic called Keyboard Trance ARP, TOTC. There's a little bit of FM going on in there because Toxic is also an FM bass plugin. But this is my attempt at like super saw type stuff. I'm just bad at it. So like, the only thing I did to this is I changed out some effects, and then In the other version of it, I added a filter for the intro and whatnot. But the important thing that I did to this is that I distorted it with the drive knob here. Which sounds terrible by itself, but kind of awesome in the song. So the last thing I want to talk about is the drums. Now, I said and mentioned in places that I'm using only FL stuff for things, and for drums, I'm using the Groove Machine. And like, I feel bad using the Groove Machine this way, because I'm basically just using it for its samples, because it has really awesome drum samples. And however, the Groove Machine is designed for and can do many, many, many more awesome things than just what I'm doing with it, which is just using it for its samples. But the fact remains, using it for its samples. So okay, in the mixer, we have here all the drum stuff. I'm running all of it into its own drum mix where it's being compressed. And I also have a separate channel for reverb where I send some of the instruments into independently. It's only outputting wet. So and then I send that into the overall sidechain where the kick is being sent, and it's sidechaining every single thing. Like all the grayed out things you're seeing here, the grayer out things you're saying here, are being changed by the kick. You can see that. And sidechaining is very important. So in case you didn't know how to do that, this is a limiter. Go into the compression section, and then you can see the sidechain. See the sidechain. If you right click it, you can see what's in it, and then your input will then be what is inputted into the compression line based on these controls here. As for mixing, now, and I know that most people, other producers who are listening to this, are probably thinking that I compressed it too much and that the drums are too hard and it's not fitting together right. And you're entitled to that opinion. I, however, happen to like it this hard. I also think that I could have had a little bit more finesse in how I did the compression, but it's not really important. So let's look at the drum mix. Just see. Actually, let's listen to the kick and the snare independently for a second. I gotta stop doing that. Just turn everything else off, including the reverb. Let's listen to what it sounds like without effects. Now, remember earlier when I mentioned the stupid use of limiter? Oh yeah. I also EQ'd. EQ is important. Especially for the snare. Now, the snare always happens when the kick happens, so it's somewhat kind of lost, but I like to put an EQ peak where the fundamental is. And that gives it a little more, like, thwack. It's like a thump and attack. It's a thwack. It gives a thwack. And then I also mess with the high end. The samples are already compressed. You can tell very easily that they're already compressed. I just did that and then turned them up afterwards using the limiters, handy dandy visual feedback. And then it's all going into the mix, and then it goes into this Maximus, which is compressing all the things. I took a lot of advantage of the soft saturation. Now, what does soft saturation do? It's a type of distortion. You can read the manual for precisely what it does, but what I use it for is see this red thing here. If I put it at just the super smallest line like that, you can see that it just cuts everything below 0 dB. No attack, no delay, no release, just cut. And that distorts. That's actually what most distortion is. And it's kind of bad to do that on like things that have more subtle sounds to them, because it'll distort it and kind of ruin it. But for things like drums, especially EDM drums, you like that because it makes everything sound so hard. I actually even turned down the drums a little bit. See, you hear the snare peaks. Now this line here is this is the compression graph for the master on the Maximus. You see now it's compressing a little bit. I like it to just be tiny bit, because it saves it from some of the more crushing problems that can arise from the distortion. But the real kicker in having a hard sounding mix is the sidechaining of all other loud things, especially bass. You don't necessarily have to sidechain the lead elements, but you do have to sidechain the bass, because the kick and the bass occupy the same space in the frequency spectrum. So if it weren't to be sidechained, it would push that way over 0 dB, the bass areas, and that would distort and just destroy everything. It'd be bad. Actually, one of these I'm sidechaining independently of the side chain, because I wanted it to not be as hard in the chord. It's the chord stab. So yeah. And on the master, I had some light EQ, and also EQing out everything below 30 hertz, because you're not going to hear any of that, you're not going to feel any of that, but it will affect your mix if there's actually like amplitude coming from there. So just forgetting about that. Now, much like the drum bus, I'm using soft saturation on the master, a little bit of compression anyway. It has a similar effect, and well, you can look at me talk. That's cool. You can see that in the compression graph. I have a little bit of compression going on anyway in the master, but that because the peaks are almost always just the kick of the snare, the distortion doesn't really matter. It doesn't destroy much. Also, almost everything is distorted anyway. The saw is being distorted. The bass is, just by the nature of being frequency modulation, is a kind of distortion. So like it doesn't matter all that much. I also even brought it back the tiniest bit to prevent it from just being too hard. But you can push it pretty hard. And tracks like Bangarang that don't have all that much going on, that's when you can make things really, really loud. It's because if there's not a lot going on, there's just singular instruments happening in individual moments, then there's not really a need to compress, and you can just make everything as loud as you want. So that's everything I think I need to cover. I think about to run out of hard drive space, so I'm going to stop making this video. Thanks for watching. Like, favorite, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. And you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter and SoundCloud under the name SeamlessR. There'll be links for that. And I hope you have learned things, and I hope you have enjoyed watching this video.